Okay, this video is going to walk you through how to find these two x-intercepts. And this equation is modeling a profit. And this is going to represent our minimum break-even point, and this is going to represent our maximum break-even point. So before we get started, I recommend that you have your own calculator and that you're going to practice this with me. So I want to make sure we all have the same equation. This is the same equation from the profit example on the top of the reflection sheet. So if you need to enter that, you can pause the video and enter that. I want to make sure we all have a similar window or the same window. And if you want to learn how to do that, that was a separate video. So you can pause the video and make sure your window is like mine. Again, I just want to mention your window doesn't have to be exactly like mine as long as you can see all the important components, the y-intercept, the vertex, and the two x-intercepts. Then your window can look slightly more zoomed in or slightly more zoomed out than mine. Okay, so again, if you need to pause the video to enter this into your own calculator, go ahead and do that. And here's my graph. Okay, so I'm trying to find these two x-intercepts right here. I can't do what I did with the vertex and use a left bound all the way from here to here, and then my right bound all the way to here, because the calculator is just going to give me one of these. So what I'm going to do is use some number sense to figure out how I want to break down my windows. So these are the steps we're going to follow, and we're going to have to do it 2 times because there's 2 x-intercepts. So I know that my x max goes all the way to 100. So this number here is 100. So about halfway is 50, and then halfway between that is about 25. So I can kind of estimate what these numbers are in here, somewhere in the 30s or 40s. I don't know exactly, but what I do know is that when I'm going to try to find the first x-intercept, I'm going to need to give it a boundary that just has the calculator look between here and here, because I only want it to have one x-intercept to name. If I have 2 x-intercepts, then that's calculator is just going to give me one of them. So let's go through these steps. And we're going to go to 2, where it says the word 0. So my left bound, again, I can go all the way over here to -10, or I could even go to 0, because that's a very clear point that I know. My window goes to -10, or I could go to 0. I'm just going to use -10, because I know that's all the way over here. And again, as I estimated, my whole window goes over to 100. About half of that is 50. About half of that is 25. So I want to give this a good amount of kind of a buffer. So I'm going to guess this is somewhere in, let's say, 40. Now, your right bound can be slightly different than mine, but what matters, and you can see this right here, is this little arrow. You can't see the other part over here. It's another triangle. But it's showing that we are looking between these 2 boundaries, or we're telling the calculator to look between these 2 boundaries and to tell me the x-intercept between them. So now you may have picked a different number, like 30 or 35, but either way, you can see I've clearly got this x-intercept between those points. So I'm going to confirm that I want the calculator to guess. And my first answer is 19. So my first x-intercept is 19. So I'm going to write that down so I can remember that. That represents the minimal amount of items I need to sell to break even. So this y-intercept is my initial investment. I sell stuff, and then suddenly I break even. So I'm not actually making money. I'm at 0. I've made back the money I initially spent. So I need to do this again. But now I have a little bit more information. I know that this is 19. So when I do this again and I pick my left bound and right bound, I know I just have to go past 19. I can pick anything past 19 and go all the way to 100. I just want to make sure I don't include that x-intercept. So I could pick something like 20. I could even go to my 40, which is what I picked before as my right. So I just have to go past this one. I don't want it to include that x-intercept. I just have to go past it. And now that I know it's 19, I can make a good choice as to what that left bound could be. So I'm going to go through these steps again. So second and trace, going to go to the 0 function. So number 2. And this time my left bound, I'm going to say, let's just do 25 because I know that that's a safe amount. It's definitely past the 19. Do you see how my arrow popped up there? So it says it's going to start looking there. And as I said, I know that this all goes all the way to 100. So I'm just going to use 100. Whatever your X max is on your window, I would just use that. It's a good right boundary to use because you know exactly what it is. Okay, so again, you can see my arrow on this one. So it's going to start looking here, from here, and you can barely see the little triangle over here, but it's going to stop looking at this right bound. So I only have one x-intercept between those two things. So when I tell it to guess, it's going to give me that x-intercept. And that x-intercept is 56. Okay, so this represents another break-even point. Past this, I start to lose money. At 56 items sold, I'm no longer making a profit. So I kind of peaked over here at the vertex, and then when I hit 56, at this point after this, I'm no longer making any money. So it doesn't make sense to sell anything beyond that. So this is one of my x-intercepts, and this is my second x-intercept.